Greetings and welcome to Wisconsin in Focus, powered by the Center Square. I'm Dan McCaleb, Vice President of News and Content at the Franklin News Foundation, publisher of the Center Square Newswire service. Joining me again today is Benjamin Yount, the Center Square's Wisconsin correspondent. How are you, Ben?
So if the president of news goes down, does that mean you take over? Is that the constitutional line? How far back in this am I?
Just a title, Ben. We are recording this on Thursday, November 2nd. Ben, more than half of students in the University of Wisconsin system said in a survey that they don't express their opinions, particularly on political issues, because they are worried about repercussions. Republicans in the state legislature now want to do something about it. Tell us more about this.
This is a conversation, I think is the best way to frame it, that has been floating around the university for years. And this is not a surprise if you've paid attention to higher education in the slightest over the past 5-10 years. You know that there are an awful lot of Republican lawmakers, conservatives, who don't like the liberal bent on college campuses. And this has been going on since you and I were in college, that colleges tend to be much more liberal. And, you know, in some parts of the state here in Wisconsin, some parts of the country, sometimes you have these little liberal enclaves in what has traditionally been Republican voter territory. That free speech survey that you referenced, where half the kids say they don't speak up because they're worried about what might happen. And not from professors, by the way. These are not students who understand that Mr. Crabtree really doesn't like it, so we're just going to stay quiet, no raise your hand. And this is students who said they're afraid of what other students will do to them, that they will be canceled or they will be shouted down or they will become pariahs. And so Republican lawmakers have been trying over the years to do something to either encourage the universities of Wisconsin, because again, 13 four-year campuses, or punish the universities if they don't embrace free speech. And this is the latest plan that would punish universities if they don't live up to the promise of First Amendment protected free speech. And what this plan comes down to is a ranking that says University of Wisconsin X failed to protect free speech in this instance in this year. And that would stay on the university's record for about 4 years, which means any student who goes to apply could see this and may think, well, maybe I don't want to go to University of Wisconsin X because of their free speech policy. And State Rep Amanda Nowesky, who is driving this, said, look, we're trying carrot and stick, and the universities have been reluctant to pick up upon the carrot, so now maybe there needs to be some stick. Democrats, as you would expect, are thoroughly up in arms about this, but it's an interesting defense because they're trying to go around the edges. A lot of talk of Title IX money, as opposed to getting to the heart of, well, why is it that someone on a university campus wouldn't be open to a more free flowing, both sides kind of conversation? Why is it that these universities seem to be a place where if you are not of a liberal mindset, if you do not go along with whatever the thought du jour is, that you may find yourself on the outside? So this is an interesting update to a conversation that's been happening for a while about free speech, particularly conservative speech, on UW campuses.
Ben, maybe not directly connected, but certainly indirectly connected. This whole issue of campus free speech has really come to a head in the last few weeks with the Israeli war with Hamas, after the Hamas terrorist group essentially blindsided Israel, went in and killed about 1,200 Jewish residents, kidnapped a couple of hundred, brought them back to Gaza, more than 100 of them still in Hamas hands in Gaza. And what's been going on college campuses, not just in Wisconsin, but around the country, where Jewish students in many cases have said they fear for themselves because of what's going on in college campuses with students specifically siding with Hamas and saying that Israel is practicing apartheid and stuff like that. So there have been cases where Jewish students would post photos of the missing Israeli family members who were kidnapped, and those photos being ripped off of campuses, etc. So, I mean, it's not directly about this issue I'm talking about what's going on recently. It's not specifically a conservative liberal viewpoint thing, although there have been pockets of, liberal groups who have taken Hamas's side on this whole thing. But why? Free speech is free speech. The First Amendment is the First Amendment. I don't understand how we've gotten to this point.
What you just said, and play back the tape and listen to your first, maybe second sentence. You called Hamas a terrorist group. That on the campus of UW-Madison would get you shouted down. That in some newsrooms would get you a reprimand. I've gotten a couple of notes from a couple of different newsrooms that says you cannot refer to Hamas as a terrorist group. That's where we're talking. And you're exactly right. This is not an A to B to C. Someone saw this protest at UW-Madison, was disgusted, came to the legislature and said there ought to be a law. But this is part of the conversation. This is where, okay, you always had demonstrations on college campuses. My mother went to Illinois State University, late 60s, early 70s. She loved to regale us with her stories of protesting against the man. You have always had an element of free speech and protest and anger on college campuses because that's what young people do. That's who young people are. The difference is that now there is 100% of zero tolerance for the other side. And it goes exactly as you said, it goes to the point where you have students ripping down pictures of terrorism victims, people who were snatched from their homes and are now being held in tunnels in Gaza, if we only knew. And that's the kind of anti-free speech. That's the kind of zero tolerance for the other point of view that lawmakers here in Wisconsin say they want to get to. They don't want to see that. They want to make more students more confident in saying things, disagreeing with that kind of mindset. And they can't go after individual students, but the legislature has the power of the purse, and the University of Wisconsin gets hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of millions and billions of dollars from the state. And so by saying, look, if you don't do something to quell that on campus, we're going to have to do something. That's a pretty powerful stick to a pretty small carrot. And yeah, that's exactly the difficulty of this, because usually in state house conversations, it's appropriations or rules or the procurement policy. This is how do you change a campus culture when the campus doesn't want to change it and you're trying to do it from the state capitol, which is as far from the campus culture as you can get in the state of Wisconsin.
Thank you for your insight, Ben. I'm just going to close with this, what I said earlier. The First Amendment is the First Amendment. It is for everyone, all Americans. It is not for one side or the other. Students should be allowed to protest if they want to, regardless of the side. But if there's a counter protest or someone on the other side protesting, that should be fine too. Ben, I look forward to your continued coverage of this issue, but that's all the time we have. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com. For Ben Yount, I'm Dan McCaleb. Please subscribe. Thank you for listening.